everybody, it's Deb with iClimb, and today we're going to work on loosening up the hips, functional movement, going back to center, in other words, changing our balance and our integrity of our core a little bit. One of the things that has to happen is movement in the hips, and a lot of you're very locked up. So I always say one of the first places we start is just to be able to go forward and backward. So your feet are straight ahead, because in gait, this is what your hips should be doing. Now, a lot of you will be doing this. Keep this still. When you walk, that torso should not be swinging right and left or rotating. It should stay straight forward as the hips go forward and backward. And notice my knees keep going forward. A lot of you don't do that in gait. They'll either collapse or go sideways or whatever. So we want to make sure they stay forward. Some of you are going to feel this in low back. Again, this doesn't mean don't do it. This means just go slow enough to do it correctly, and it'll loosen things up. Notice whether you feel it on one side or both, bilateral. And as you work, notice how much things unwind. I used to feel it on one side, now I feel it on both, but it feels like it's working, not just tight on one side. Again, awareness is huge. You can't change what you're not aware of. So we're going forward and backward. Why is that important? Again, it's the same movement that your hips are supposed to be doing in gait. You've got to start with the basics in order to get to the bigger picture, and this is a perfect example of that. So once you've done that, and again, notice your range of motion. How much does one knee move in front of the other? Does it not move at all? Does one side move more than the other? Really work on that. Pay attention to, is it easier to move forward or is it easier to move back? Technically, it should be able to be equal both forward and backward, and that doesn't mean difficult. That means with ease, because this will make a difference in your gait. Now, excuse me. One of the things that we also need to be able to do is scoot. So if you're going to dinner or whatever, a lot of you are going to avoid getting in a booth because you don't want to have to scoot. You need to be able to do that. Sometimes you need to, if you're sitting in a doctor's office on a table, they'll need for you to scoot one direction or the other. You need to be able to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is just weight shift, right and left. Do not push off with your feet. A lot of you will want to do that. Again, the work comes from here. Pretend you have no legs. I'm just moving from side to side, and notice how my torso stays upright. I'm not collapsing or turning or anything of that nature. And I'm lifting. Now, notice how much of the hip comes off the chair, the table, whatever you're on. And I want you to get to the point where you're moving enough to where that hip, that opposite hip, is off the chair. Why do I want that? Number one, range of motion. Number two, balance. Be able to hold this position and that opposite hip off the chair. And now we're going to go this way. Notice my torso stays completely forward, no compromising, no weird patterns. It's not going sideways or rotating. And I'm going to keep that opposite hip off of the chair, but still be able to maintain some balance. Again, part of this is about balance, guys. You have to be able to shift weight and move. All right, if you want, and this is just something that you can attain as you get stronger and more comfortable, is to be able to go sideways, and we've done a little bit of this before, and you're going to lift that leg and you're going to hold that. Again, working on balance. You will feel the muscles in your torso, in your leg. Guys, sometimes holding a position is an exercise by itself. So in that position, just make sure, and if you want to hold on, that's fine too, and then just work on maybe releasing one hand. Again, where there's a will, there's a way. There's always a way to progress to where we want to get to. Doesn't matter where you started. There's always a way. And you're going to lift, and again, if you want to hold on, you can. And you can start with lifting one hand, and then you can do both. And the more this is upright, the easier it is going to be to hold that position. All right, now that we've got a little bit of movement here, we're going to work on stability. I cannot overemphasize stability. If you don't have stability, Nothing else really matters. Now, in this, you'll want to use a utility strap, which you can buy at a hardware store, and I would suggest a 4-foot one. I don't know, prices are maybe up now, but less than $5 for sure. And I would say a 4-foot utility strap. We don't want it to be stretchy because we don't want it to move. If your knees tend to collapse, we're going to put it above the knees. If the knees tend to go wide and you tend to roll out onto the sides of the feet, you're going to put a yoga block, a ball, or something in the knees. We're going to do medial lateral hip stability, all right? So we're going to take this up here. Now, where my thighs go into my hips need to be in direct alignment with the center of my patella, my kneecap, that are also in direct alignment with the center of my foot. This is what we want. This is stability by itself. This right here, again, just holding that, a lot of you are going to feel that, and you're going to really feel those muscles under the glute and at the top of the hip. So again, I can use a yoga block, I can use a ball, and I want those feet facing forward. My ankles are underneath my knees. I'm going to sit in an upright position, and I'm going to pull on the strap, and I'm going to squeeze the block at the same time. And then I'm going to release. And I'm going to pull and squeeze. I'm going to hold that about 3 to 4 seconds. And then I'm going to release. And the reason I want you to hold that, those muscles need to get used to holding you in a stable position. A lot of you, again, it's going to be weak. You're going to really feel it. Take a break if you need to. You cannot overdo this one without question. Notice the position I'm in. The more you're in that anterior tilt or neutral hip, the more you're going to get out of it. Don't allow yourself to slouch or come back here. Sit in an upright position. Again, take a break if you need to. So you're going to pull out, squeeze, and then release. Pull out on the strap, squeeze the block. Again, wherever it is, and you're going to release. And again, I would do that 15 to 20 times. Take a break if you need to. Once you've got that stability, then we're going to do a little bit of isolated hip flexor, all right? So now this is the muscle that we use to go up and down stairs, and that's what initiates gait, so you literally can lift that foot. Because of your hip rotation, where a lot of you are, these don't work correctly. And that's also why it's hard to go, especially up the stairs, or to lift to get up and over a tub or whatever. So what you're going to do for starters is, again, you're looking forward, you're in that upright position, you're going to lift and you're going to lower. Nice and slow and controlled. Don't plop that foot down, all right? Lift and lower. I'm just isolating that hip flexor that initiates my gait. That starts the movement. There's no point in trying to do other things, especially multiple, movements where you've got multiple things involved, if this is not doing its job. Back up and go to the basics. You're going to lift and you're going to lower. And you're going to lift and you're going to lower. And again, you're going to do that, I would say, at least 15 to 20 times on each side. Now, we can work on that contralateral pattern. If this leg goes up, this leg is forward, that means my left arm is going to reach. So I'm going to, at the same time, I lift this knee, I'm going to raise that left arm. My foot is forward, my knee is in line with my hip. It can't be over here and it can't be over here. It all needs to line up from the foot to the knee to the hip and lower. I highly recommend that you stay on the same side. That way you have a better awareness of what's going on. Correct what needs to be corrected, and both sides will not most likely be equally as hard. You'll have one side that's harder than the other. Notice how much you're leaning or rotating. Pay attention to weight distribution on the hip. I'm lifting the knee and the arm because in gait they have to work together. And as I lift that arm, I'm also once again repositioning the rib cage and the scapula. If you want, you can take this arm behind the head. That just creates more integrity in that core. And you're going to lower. And hopefully you start to feel that in the front of the hip. And you're going to lift and you're going to lower. and you're going to lift, and you're going to lower. And then we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Once we've done that, we're going to move to the feet a little bit, because again, that whole kinetic chain, hip to foot, foot to hip, however you want to look at it, all matters. If your feet are too tight, that always says there's something in the hip not doing its job, and one side is taking over. So let's do a little bit of foot sliding. So let's start with left. So we're going to slide that forward, and some of you, we've done this in different modules. You're going to open those toes. The center of the foot, the knee, and the hip have to all be in the same line, not out here somewhere. Pay attention to the opposing side. That knee, foot, hip also need to be in line as well. And you're going to hold that. Again, the three main rules in foot sliding: the feet have to be open, toes have to be open, not grabbing. You're going to let that open up, stretch those top 2 layers of the foot. Remember, 5 layers, 33 bones. And those bottom 2 are going to feel like they're arching. Again, you may feel like, if it feels like a cramp, kind of back off, wiggle your foot around, go back to it. That's how it gets better. Also, a lot of you have issues with pronation. In other words, your ankles want to roll in. So what happens in this one, it reshapes and realigns that whole ankle. Makes a huge difference in your balance and your stability. Equal weight distribution on the foot, toes are open. Now I'm going to slide this back. Notice that my knee still stays facing forward, not here or here. The whole foot is down. My heel is down. Maybe get a stretch, depending on the person, on Achilles soleus, which is the muscle between the calf, the gastroc, and the heel, or the Achilles. You may feel a stretch there. Let that stretch. Remember the 2 most important characteristics of the foot: being able to load and have mobility. Crucial. That's another reason you need to do it in barefoot or socks. Now, once that you've done that, I always say don't do them both together, because you need to know where your parts are in space, need to make sure the integrity of the movement is there. Once you've positioned one side, now you can position the opposite. So one forward, one back, just like in gait. So what you end up getting here is increased mobility in the foot ankle. A lot of you are going to feel a stretch across the top of that ankle. If you look at anatomy, there's kind of a band or a belt right here that that holds everything in, that runs across the top of that foot. You may feel it there, you may feel it at the back of the heel, depending on where your dysfunctional patterns are. And you're just going to hold that. Now, if this is something where you want to maximize what you're doing, add some other things to it while you're holding. Let's do some snow angels. So head up and arms down. And arms up, tilting that head, working on muscles in the cervical paraspinals, behind the neck, and dropping it while we're letting this stretch. Now, if that's too much and you want to start, if your shoulders are really tight, then let's do shoulder rolls. Something to increase your efficiency of your time. We can do back shoulder rolls. Just make sure, and this is where people have a problem whether they're doing arm circles or back shoulder rolls, the rib cage has got to tilt in order to bring the scapula and everything back where it belongs, because most of you are here, shoulders are forward. The shoulders cannot roll back unless the rib cage opens up. So as you're doing back shoulder rolls, arm circles, whatever you're doing, and notice the higher my arms go, the more that rib cage tilts, just pay attention to this position. You always want to feel like this is tilting. So we'll do some arm circles, but we're going to switch it. So we're going to switch one side and then the other. Again, toes are open, knee forward, check my alignment. Everything is flat to the floor. And again, this is one where you may feel like something starts to cramp. Back off a little bit, play with it, and then hold it in that position. So we're going to do some back arm circles, and I always say go backwards because the muscles on the back side have to initiate. You're way too tight on the front. Notice where your palms are. They should face upward. A lot of you will only be here. The stronger those muscles get in the upper mid back, the more you're going to be able to open that up, the more you're going to also be able to tilt that rib cage. So we're going to do some back arm circles, shoulder rolls, whatever you want to do, and you can start here, especially if it's really tight. And then we're going to switch it again. Again, I say switch one side at a time and do that forward. Now, in foot sliding, 3 times in each position, if you hold it, is adequate. It will make a huge difference in your mobility in the foot and ankle. So we've done some arm circles, we've done some back shoulder rolls, so now we're going to do some snow angels. And again, challenge, don't force. If this is as far as you can go without some discomfort and feeling like you're compensating, that's where you're going to stop, always. So if you need to start here, but here's what I will tell you. If you focus on repositioning this first, especially if you get here and it starts to be uncomfortable, you will always, 100% of the time, be able to increase your range of motion, decrease discomfort. I see it time and time and time again. So if you need to break it down, break it down. Reposition first, then raise the arms, and then lower. Work your way up. Try to straighten your arms. Once again, this whole kinetic chain needs to be working as a unit. I can't swing a tennis racket or anything with that bent elbow position and have any velocity. It doesn't work that way. I've got to be able to straighten that arm. All right, the whole thing has to work as a unit, just like the hip, the knee, the ankle, and the foot. Okay, so keep the arm nice and straight. We're going here. And if you want to work on, and this is totally up to you, depending on where you are, note your progress, guys. There's nothing wrong with journaling. If you're really serious about this, you will, because in a process like this where you're trying to regain functional movement, sometimes when you do it every day, you're not aware of how much you've gained. So start noting, how much time was I able to do this? How many repetitions was I able to do? So once you've done all that, now we can start doing contralateral patterns. In other words, I'm swinging this forward and then I'm swinging this back. I can do it in the foot slide and I can do it in the isolated hip flexor. Keeping that torso nice and tight. That's really the goal. All right, so that is just some stability work, working on balance. The other thing I want to mention too while we're in sitting is so many of you, and I'm going to swing this around a little bit, so many of you have issues with kyphotic posture, that head is forward. Again, this weighs 12 or 13 pounds. You can't hold a dumbbell out here 12 or 13 pounds all day long without having stress and strain up here. So you're creating that by your head position, and that's weak, so you've got to strengthen that. One of the best ways that requires, in my opinion, a little effort, and a lot of you know what this is. This is called a versus step, a porcupine, and you can use this in sitting. So if you're going to sit in a chair or if you're still driving, push against it. That's not hard. That way you're still contracting those paraspinals and maintaining that posture instead of driving like this or sitting like this while you're watching something or doing something. Change the position. Between my shoulder blades is my favorite. I keep one in my car, I keep one in my suitcase, I keep one at my house. So I use it all the time. Driving, especially long distance, this is invaluable. And I have lots of clients who do the same thing. I'll start with up here, hold that for a little while, kind of move it down. And if this is a problem in the low back, I would highly recommend you use it. Now, the one thing I will say, especially in the low back, if this is uncomfortable, probably because things are too tight, get a hand towel or a washcloth and put it there before you sit. And if you notice, now I have a lumbar curve. That belongs there because when you sit, you lose that lumbar curve. By putting that porcupine there and pushing back, now I can sit with that lumbar curve. And here's what I will tell you in feedback. I didn't notice that I was as stiff, my back didn't hurt, my hips didn't hurt. And again, this is people that are giving me feedback from starting to use this in the car and things like that. Because now you're in that more neutral position. That's what it boils down to. So we can use all kinds of tools to bring ourselves in a better position because that position, again, is where we want to be in vertical. If you can't do it in sitting, you can't do it in vertical. So those are just some tips to bring you more into alignment, create better stability, better posture, and I know you can do it. And then we can move forward with other things that are more challenging. Good luck.